county of Worcestershire really is a fabulous place to live. From the vibrant cathedral city of Worcester to the wonderful lifestyle of countryside living at its very best. At RJ Country Homes, we specialise in selling village and country properties across this glorious county. And, together with property industry experts, we will be giving you some top tips and expert advice about moving home and guiding you along the way. Barrie, thank you for joining us on this lovely sunny day.
Thank you for asking.
Let's talk obviously about septic tanks, but what is a septic tank for those that don't know?
Great subject. Septic tank, quite simply, is a contained way of managing your sewer effluent from your property without being able to connect onto a main water company's network.
Great.
Tank in the ground.
Yeah.
That has a discharge. That discharge goes into, or should go into, a drainage field.
And do you find it's most homes in the country that you come across septic tanks?
No, mostly rural locations
Yeah.
where you haven't got that utility infrastructure. Typically, I think they estimate something like 5% of the population are dependent on septic tanks. So it's not a small number when you think about that in the context of properties. Most of those will be in rural locations.
I think when people move from the town to the country, you get concerned if they don't know about septic tanks and how often should they be emptied, how do they work, what do we need to do, what's your advice?
Yeah, it's nothing to be scared of. It's a simple way of living in the sense that you haven't got those utility bills and you can manage your own system. Yeah, you just use it and look after it. I always think about septic tanks a little bit like your stomach. And the drainage field is your intestines. And if you want it to be really healthy, you can add a probiotic in, which is a little bit of food for the bacteria, and you can get a nice balance. You can manage them really well. And to me, I find it a very natural way of managing well your environmental discharge.
How often should they be emptied?
Okay, the general binding rules, which I'm sure we'll touch on later, do say that they should be emptied every 12 months. Emptying can vary, but that's what the rules say. It depends how you look after it, same as everything else.
It really can vary. We had a client once and they hadn't emptied their septic tank for 50 years and I thought, oh, that's a rather long time.
Well, it is, but if you've got a good bacterial process going on and you've got a right sort of balance, then that's fine. It's good. But if you don't clean them and you do get sediments passing through from the septic tank into the drainage field, it's a filter. That filter stops working, and that causes problems with
and
the
if
system.
the wind's blowing the wrong way, it's a little fresh.
They do have a slight pond, but it shouldn't be overpowering. If you get a very strong smell from a septic tank, usually there's a problem with it.
Right.
And that is usually a bacterial malfunction in that someone's put too much bleach down and they all died. So you have to repopulate.
Okay, and what are these new regulations? Talk us through.
Okay, general binding rules actually came out in 2015. They were supposed to be a mandatory requirement by January 2020, but with the COVID pandemic, the EA sort of pulled back from that. But where it does become an absolute is during the conveyancing process. So now, when a solicitor is checking out that purchase, they want all of this information, and also they're protecting themselves in asking those questions, and it's incumbent on the owner of the septic tank, or if I use the word operator, we can touch on that later, that they will then be expected to answer those questions. If you can't answer those questions, or you're not aware of potential problems that could exist in the way that the septic tank's being set up, then that can throw the whole conveyancing process into disarray. I've come across people that have been in tears where they've lost properties because they could answer the questions. It's a very emotional thing, the purchase of a house, as we've touched on previously, and that will sort of break that engagement, and the sale is lost. It's devastating.
I know when we go out to houses and obviously we talk about septic tanks, we talk about the new regulations. I think every single seller that we've come across, not one of them knows about these new regulations. I just wonder why. I know they hear it from an agent, but why don't they hear about it before?
Because we tend not to go to the government websites to read their rules and regulations. The government tell us by putting things on their .gov website, and
Just hope that you look and
yeah,
check.
it's not normal bedtime reading
No, not
or
really.
daytime reading, but all the information's on there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does throw the spanner in the works.
And the liability is on the seller.
Yeah, well, it's on the operator. So if you have a septic tank
Mm-hmm.
and there's just you connecting into it, you're the operator.
Right.
Some septic tanks, there are 2 or 3 properties connecting into it.
Okay.
They're all operators and all equally responsible.
Yeah.
And also wherever the drainage field is, if the drainage field is discharging into another property or a field, that person is also classed as an operator. So there is shared responsibilities potentially, and it's good to be aware of those and potentially, certainly if it's a drainage field that is in someone else's property boundary, that get a simple maintenance agreement sorted out that gives you access, and you're guaranteeing them that you're not going to start putting nasty chemicals down the septic tank and poison the land.
Yeah, of course. Well, what would be your tips if you're looking to go on the market, you're not sure if your tank's compliant, what do you do?
Well, speak to you or give me
Get a specialist.
Give me a call.
Yeah.
You can do it yourself. It's not overly onerous. The big issues are you can check your levels by looking at the inlets and outlets of the septic tank, which is if it's the level is higher than the outlet or inlet, then obviously you've got a problem somewhere.
Yeah.
Potentially, well, it doesn't matter, but there's potentially a problem there. If your discharge is going into a stream, a ditch, a river, that is a no-no. And part of the regulations coming in was to protect the environment and stop us putting partially treated sewage into rivers. You've seen on the news, all of our rivers are polluted.
I think it's a great thing that's come into place. It's just giving that information out, isn't
absolutely.
it? You know, how it works.
Well, it's absolutely positive. It's a great way of managing your sewage. You engage it with nature on a slightly different level, and let's face it, some of the biggest polluters are water companies, so you just see it all the time, constantly discharging into rivers and streams, so you can manage it yourself. I think it's good to be self-contained and do it a natural way.
I think it is fantastic that these new regulations have come into place, all pollution and everything else, so it's a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, very much so.
And finally, some top tips for those that are looking to put the house on the market and they've got a septic tank. What should they do?
Okay, as I said, they could read the general binding rules.
Yes.
It's all there. There's nothing scary, but it's going to take a while.
Bedtime reading?
Yeah, it's to speak to you or speak to somebody like me, and I will come out and evidence everything that's needed, to make sure that you're discharging in the right way, you're not polluting. And also, general binding rules need you to take certain actions. So you inspect it every month, you clean it every year, you record any problems, and I provide forms that you can fill in. So you create basically a logbook for your septic tank, and that gives you evidence that you're looking after it, and that's what the solicitor needs for the conveyancing process.
Oh, great, thank you so much, Barrie. It's been really useful. Thank you for talking all things septic tanks, and we will see you soon.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.